They called it the Blunderstorm, an interstellar diplomatic catastrophe so embarrassing that entire sectors of the galactic net refused to archive the footage. Humanity, newly inducted into the Stellar Accord, had somehow managed to offend over 600 species in one day. It began, innocently enough, a welcome ceremony at the Great Council Hall on Orvenix Prime, complete with traditional multiversal chants and a ceremonial exchange of sacred light forms. But then came Earth's contribution. They called it Open Mic Night. Elia Knox, then a barely acknowledged junior liaison, stood frozen behind the curtain as a Brazilian comedian opened with a bit about psychic flatulence, an American poet, recited slam verse about bureaucratic constipation, and a Japanese jazz trio backed it all with chaotic improv. The holographic face of Chancellor Trallum, a translucent gelatinous being with stress-sensitive color ripples, turned a violent shade of violet. By the time the human representative closed with a heartfelt karaoke rendition of Bohemian Rhapsody, complete with theatrical gestures and a light show, the council chambers had devolved into panicked confusion, cultural insult tribunals, and emergency vomit evacuations. Several species regurgitated in reverse when emotionally overwhelmed. Protocol 9A was invoked within hours, a formal debate on whether Earth should be forcibly isolated for terminal irreverence. The chamber echoed with phrases like irreparable cognitive dissonance and species-wide behavioral instability. Elia, still clutching her data pad, had not been scheduled to speak, but in the vacuum left by Earth's now absent ambassador, currently being detained for trying to high-five a tentacled elder of the Virulth conglomerate, she was nudged forward. The microphone drooped slightly. Every alien eye tracked her. Her translator chip buzzed nervously against her temple. Elia cleared her throat and said simply, "You can't exile us. We quit." The silence that followed was seismic, not just because it broke protocol, but because she hadn't finished. "Also," she added, "karaoke is universal. You're welcome." Then she tapped her chest twice, dropped her badge, and walked out of the chamber, trailing a plume of stunned silence and diplomatic paperwork. The message she left behind in the Accord's comnet was a single line of text encoded in 3 billion data glyphs. "We'd rather be alone than boring." In the months that followed, galactic analysts scrambled to interpret Earth's move. Was it strategic, suicidal, laughably human? Most settled on the third option and moved on. But on Earth, Elia's resignation became a rallying cry. Within days, nations convened emergency summits. Within weeks, borders blurred. Within 6 months, Earth had done the unthinkable, unified, not from peace or fear, but from sheer, unfiltered embarrassment. Elia was made supreme liaison by a vote margin so wide even the conspiracy theorists gave up. Her first order? No comms with the Accord, no explanations, just silence. And then, they vanished. Earth, as far as the galaxy could tell, went dark. What no one realized was that Earth hadn't quit. Earth had gone to war, with its own disorganization, its own latency, its own petty divisions. Deep underground labs hummed with invention. Orbiting stations tested gravitational field acceleration. A team of scientists, led by the unnervingly calm Dr. Len Marin, initiated a chronostretch initiative, manipulating Earth's solar orbit and time dilation fields to give humanity 50 subjective years, while only 5 passed outside. When Arvix Tal, the Sundrel journalist, filed his final report before Earth's disappearance, his closing line became infamous. They weren't laughing with us. They weren't even laughing at us. They were laughing while calculating escape velocity. Meanwhile, Elia convened a council not of politicians, but of engineers, poets, comedians, veterans, hackers, chefs, physicists, children. Every odd brilliance Earth had once ignored was summoned forward. "We're not fixing our image," she told them. "We're becoming the kind of problem they can't survive without." The stars spun on. The Accord forgot. The universe sighed, in relief. But deep in a hollowed-out asteroid station, humming with time-anchored fields and sarcastic slogans engraved in polished steel, Elia Knox smiled and whispered, "Let's give them something to really overreact about." By the time the Stellar Accord stopped checking Earth's last transmission logs, 50 subjective years had passed on the blue-green world once dismissed as a cosmic farce. And in that time, under a veil of digital silence and artificially accelerated temporal fields, Earth rewrote itself from the mitochondria up. Elia Knox, now surrounded by a council that included a Nobel-winning 8-year-old, a street dancer turned propulsion physicist, and a surprisingly reasonable AI named Jeff, oversaw the single most radical redefinition of a species in galactic history. The orbital chronosheath wrapped around Earth allowed every minute outside to stretch into hours within, and while the Accord watched for signs of self-destruction, humanity instead orchestrated renaissance after renaissance at machine gun pace. National borders were replaced with research zones, cultural districts, and collaborative territories. Bureaucracies were digitized, then mocked into obsolescence by autonomous satirical protocols that rewrote tax codes in limericks. Elia, personally, outlawed the phrase, "We've always done it that way," and any official still using the term committee was immediately reassigned to asteroid composting. By year 20, for them, Earth's scientific frontier had not only discovered the quantum fold, but had folded it into a functional star drive, one that required no fuel, no inertia buffer, and moved by slipping between moments like an idea, skipping a meeting. Zero-entropy reactors, powered by stabilized paradox loops, provided clean, infinite energy to a population that now saw war as a performance art for educational reenactments only. Global education shifted toward applied absurdity, teaching 12-year-olds how to think like strategists and prank like engineers. Every citizen was taught not only how to defend themselves, but how to deconstruct a hostile surveillance algorithm with sarcasm, misdirection, and a haiku. Dr. Len Marin perfected a method of editing space-time-like code, debugging causality, rewriting historical mistakes into theoretical dead ends, and letting them collapse harmlessly. Naira Voss, the ever-smiling security lead, trained Earth's new peacekeeping force not in how to fight, but how to weaponize perception. Their motto, "We're not the threat, your assumption is." Across simulations and encrypted negotiations, Elia drilled her people in diplomacy, chaos, and counter-bureaucracy. The Terran Pact, as they now called themselves, had only one goal: return not as the punchline, but as the writers of the next chapter. When asked why she pushed so hard, why she refused to allow complacency, Elia only grinned and said, "Because they think we're the joke. Let's be the callback no one saw coming." As year 45 arrived, Earth's orbit subtly shifted again. Time field beacons were deactivated. All outward-facing senses reawakened. The Accord would notice soon. In the heart of the Exostrat hub, once the International Space Station, now the command nexus of Earth's unified presence, Elia stepped out onto the balcony overlooking the construction yards where massive silver-edged ships, too sleek and impossible to be of any current galactic design, waited like wolves in the snow. Each bore the 7-star insignia of Earth's post-national alliance, and each was armed not just with technology, but with the unbearable weight of certainty. The stars looked the same. The galaxy had not changed, but Earth had. And it was time the others knew. As she turned back inside, her command console chimed. A faint signal had reached the edge of the system, an Accord probe, checking in, still expecting static or confusion. Instead, Elia tapped the console, and with a voice measured, warm, and laced with irreverent poise, she said, "To whom it may concern, we're awake now. You might want to sit down." Then she smiled. Not the smile of arrogance, but of precision. Of someone who knows exactly what panic she's about to cause. The panic began 38 seconds after Earth's reemergence signal, and within 2 galactic hours, the Stellar Accord was in full procedural lockdown. emergency subcommittees forming faster than they could collapse, holographic broadcasts, flooded with speculation, and at least one species attempting to declare Earth's transmission a prank virus. But then, the fleet arrived. Not just one or two ships like diplomatic vessels of old, but an entire formation of elegant arc-sculpted cruisers that didn't glide through space. They pivoted through dimensions, appearing in orbit around Accord space, like punctuation at the end of a long-forgotten sentence. They bore no weapons in the traditional sense, and yet each vessel's silhouette radiated quiet menace, its surfaces gleaming with engineered graviton veils and time-resistant hull coatings that shimmered like the inside of a dream interrupted. The Accord's outer defense array, a system once touted as eternally unbreachable, simply stood down, not from external command, but from internal consensus. No one wanted to provoke whatever those ships were. Then came the voice, broadcast on all bands, translatable in every known frequency, yet delivered in Earth's native tone of casual authority. Greetings from Earth. We're back. Shall we continue the conversation? The transmission was signed Ambassador General Elia Knox, Supreme Liaison of the Unified Terran Pact. The name hit like a black hole across galactic channels. Some remembered her from the Blunderstorm. Others had dismissed her entirely. Now she descended from the lead cruiser Continuum's edge with only two delegates, Dr. Len Marin, who quietly recalibrated the temperature of the landing pad with a nod, and Naira Voss, who walked with the amused expression of someone perpetually 5 seconds ahead of a fight that hadn't started yet. Elia wore no armor, just a sharply cut diplomatic uniform with minimalist circuitry etched into the seams, and she strolled into the grand hall of the Stellar Accord, with the composure of someone arriving late to a party she knew she'd end up hosting. The hall fell silent. Chancellor Trallum quivered through 17 color phases before attempting a welcome. Under Accord protocol, it began, voice gelatinous with stress, all re-entry negotiations must be preceded by formal hearings to— Yes, Elia interrupted, offering a thin smile. I read your protocols, folded them into paper cranes during our briefing. Pretty birds. Surprisingly aerodynamic. Murmurs erupted among the delegates. She raised one hand. We're not here to beg. We're here to upgrade the firmware of this entire institution. With a casual flick of her fingers, she projected the readmission declaration, not a request, but a constitution, onto the hall's central dais. It was written in Accord Standard, Earth English, and a metalinguistic code that hadn't even been formally discovered yet by the rest of the galaxy. It outlined a new council model, cooperative leadership based on adaptability, contribution, of technology, and a rotating consensus model that punished stagnation. Beneath it were Earth's gift packages, solutions to systemic issues that had plagued Accord civilizations for centuries, a cure for subcellular entropy in Clavian birthing pools, a temporal sync protocol that eliminated wormhole jitter, a fix for the Galtrix diplomatic paradox that had stalled 14 treaties since the Accord's founding. Each was presented like a party favor casually handed out at a brunch. We also solved your food replication energy loss issue, Elia added, glancing at a flustered chef ambassador. You're welcome. The cupcakes are now actual cake. When one delegate from the Vrext coalition tried to challenge Earth's unilateral posture, asking, "What makes you think you can dictate terms?" Elia simply stepped closer, her voice velvet and surgical. We're not dictating. We're collaborating. Just better, faster, possibly louder. But if you need validation, our fleet is diplomatically parked. Shall I unpark it? Silence returned. Arvix Tal, watching from the press gallery, recorded every word with a mixture of awe and existential nausea. He would later write, "It wasn't that Earth came back stronger, it's that they came back certain, and that terrified everyone more than any warship." Behind Elia, her delegates simply stood quietly. Nira watched the exits. Len Marin tapped a cube that slowly began unfolding itself into what would later be described as an epistemological singularity in travel mug form. As the council recessed in stunned silence, scrambling to interpret the terms without admitting they understood them too late, Aaliyah turned back toward her ship with a half-smile and muttered to herself, "This went better than karaoke. They tried, of course, tried to delay, dissect, dilute. The Stellar Accord scrambled to assemble legacy coalitions, dust off outdated emergency charters, and negotiate the unnegotiable. But Earth hadn't returned to bargain. It had returned to redefine. By the third day of Elia Knox's delegation, the council chambers had transformed into something closer to a live diagnostics hub than a political forum. Delegates now whispered in the halls, not about Earth's arrogance, but about their quiet horror, that everything Earth offered worked. The temporal equilibrium stabilizers stopped chronal drift in the Kelvin rifts. The psychological resilience algorithm cured Vexari hibernation trauma. Even the interlingua patch, developed by an Earth linguist who once taught sarcasm to AI, resolved 6,000 years of accidental diplomatic offenses with a single syntax update. Earth didn't just fix problems. It revealed how little the galaxy had dared to ask of itself. The Terran readmission document had, in its fine print, a clause that rewrote the balance of power. The Accord could remain, yes, but Earth would form the core of a new hybrid governing model, the Concordance Nexus, where species were evaluated, not by longevity or seniority, but by adaptability, contribution, and contextual empathy. The Council fumed, but Earth didn't flinch. They weren't alone anymore. Flanking their declaration were formal letters of recognition from over a dozen non-Accord civilizations. The Mael Vorth, the Satarn Emergence, even the elusive Whispered. Kind, all acknowledging Earth as a primary diplomatic node. When asked in a closed session how these relationships formed so quickly, Elia answered with her usual grin. Turns out, improvisation is a universal language, especially when backed by a 312 ship fleet that can teleport through logic. The foe. Climax came not in battle, but in the quiet moment when the Chancellor himself, a being that once dismissed humanity as probationary mammals with cultural incontinence, placed his appendages on the central dais and said, "The Accord acknowledges." A shift. That shift was codified, enacted, and celebrated, though no one quite knew how Earth had made it look so easy. At the official recommencement ceremony, the galaxy's press swarmed the balcony as Elia stepped forward, flanked by Len Marine sipping from what may or may not have been a quantum singularity, and Naira Voss casually spinning a pocket stiletto she'd smuggled through 30 layers of security as a matter of principle. "We're honored to rejoin you," Aaliyah said, eyes scanning. The species gathered below, but let's be honest, we didn't come back to sit in the same chairs. We're here to build a better table, one with adjustable seating, and maybe a built-in sarcasm filter. You're welcome in advance. The audience rippled with laughter. Some genuine, some confused, but all aware they were now laughing with Earth, not at it. Aaliyah handed over a final data crystal, marked simply, "For when things go sideways," and turned to leave. A young reporter from the Crixon Arcology shouted after her, "Ambassador Knox, was this whole plan really in motion from the day you left?" Elia paused on the threshold of the shuttle ramp, sunlight slicing across her sharp features, and after a moment, she answered with a shrug and a smirk. "Do you think we accidentally invented time compression, planetary unity, and space-slicing star drives just for fun?" Then she winked. "Actually, yes, but the rest, that was strategy." As the continuum's edge lifted skyward, leaving a reformed council grappling with their new reality, Arvix Tal finished his report with a final line etched into history. In the end, Earth never came to conquer. They came to collaborate harder than anyone else could fight. And in doing so, they reminded the galaxy that the most dangerous species is the one that learns from humiliation.